Action.
Good afternoon, this is Barbara Kipper with the Hickory and Mustang Heritage Alliance. I think we're just going to take a second and introduce each other and then get started.
She told me I had 2 seconds, so I'm Delores Lindsay. I'm local here in Bloomfield and train horses for a living and do all this stuff. So, welcome.
Hi, I'm Nancy Bernhall. I'm a member of the JMHA. I do live here in the county. I train horses, and I'm just passionate about them.
And I'm Patricia Irick.
I know.
And
We still need to hear you.
and I live in an adjacent county and run an organization called Mustang Camp and train horses. And do you want to get into my film?
I'd like to go back to, take us back to this topic, which is talking about our New Mexico Mustangs. And I did. Talking about our New Mexico Mustangs and what makes them so very special, and they have endeared themselves to all of us. Going back to the 70s, and so there was a song by Ian Tyson called La Primera. It's one of my most favorite songs, and back in that day I didn't appreciate it quite as much as I do today, but back then it talked about the arrival of horses to America in 1493. It described them as the drinker of the wind and that they never tired, and how much they loved their freedom, and coined the Spanish Mustang. So the conquistadors, the cowboys, the Indians through the years have all been part of the glory and the history through wars and all the growth of this great country. So from Ian Tyson's song to today, the Mustang has endeared itself to me as something that has touched my heart deeply, very much a part of the passion that I live and breathe every single day. Several panelists today, I think, have been discussing whether the horse is a Native American, native to America, or whether they came here with the conquistadors and all the various philosophies. But I think whether you embrace either direction, the stories of the cowboys and the Native Americans and how the horse has been established in New Mexico cannot be denied, because New Mexico is an extreme, well-documented path of settlement and trading, horse trading, that has occurred here since the 1500s. Just like the USA is a melting pot, so is our horses. Through trading, and whether they were traded legally or whether they were stolen, the Apaches certainly brought the Spanish horse to life. Sarah Annan, who was supposed to be here, who has done a lot of work documenting history and taking it back to King Ferdinand's and trying to understand all of the impacts and who actually started the various bloodlines and stuff. She couldn't be here today, but I would like to quote her when she talked about that the Hickory Mustangs are a unique living library of the complex history of the American Southwest. And I think that does set the stage. And for all of us that have, through the years, that have had the passion for the American quarter horse, did you know that the American quarter horse is really founded in Mustang genetics and genes? That's the Berber influence that comes across. Back in 2013, the BLM 642 Mustangs from the Hickory. And at that time, Dr. Cawthron documented that he felt that there was 44% of the documentation that showed there was rare, what they call alleles. I'll never say it right, so give it up. Alleles. And that this herd deserved to be protected. So that was documented back from 2013. The Spanish Bar, the Old World, Iberian, all of those genes through the years, many are lost, many are rare, and this is the genetics that make up what is in our New Mexico Mustang herds today, and they are small and rare. Talk about the personality of these horses. I think once you actually have an opportunity to love and embrace the curiosity and the fun-loving side of these horses, you'll know that they are indeed rare. They're not just horses, they're curious, they're fun-loving creatures. They're kind and gentle. They've gone on to be so many therapy horses and kids horses that I know for certain that come out of the Hickory herd. The secret is in the training. The secret is in the foundation and how they get started. They don't necessarily adapt well to the old cowboy ways. The Hickory herd is in our own backyard. It's only 50 miles from Woodfield. And through the years, a little bit of data, and then I will pass it on. Actually, in 1968, the Hickory herd was documented to have 212 horses on it. Whether that's a great number or not, 212. In the late 70s and early 80s, there was a die-off from the winter storms that took that herd down to less than 100. That herd has since grown and survived through since 2004. Almost 1,000 horses have been removed through bait trapping from the Hickory herd, and there's still approximately 300 out there when you look at what is Caracas and the BLM, as well as what is in the Carson Forest. So with those kind of numbers today, I think it is more than time for us to look at how we protect and preserve this herd going forward. So I'm going to pass it for the trainers and people that own this horses to talk about all the other fun stuff about these Mustangs.
Oh my gosh. Okay, I'm Nancy. Not really sure what I'm going to say on that. I have nothing, really. Of course, I've been passionate about horses all my life, like the rest of you are. I've had the opportunity to own 2 Hickory Mustangs. I cannot say enough about them. They're forever home. Because I don't know, after Tulio's performance today, I don't know if I can let him go. He was a rock star. We'll see about that. I just encourage everybody, they're smart, they're willing, and if they pick you as their person, you have a forever partner, and that's the one thing I can say about what I know about the Caracas Mustangs. What else to say? I do want to say one thing about, we call them the American Mustang. They like their freedom, they like their to roam, just like we do. Our politics are coming up and everything. And we have American quarter horses, we have the American Mustang, and our horses are founded off of the American Mustang. So just to throw that in.
I'd like to say something about the history of the horses in this area. And one thing to note is that there was a trade route from Santa Fe to California. Okay? California had mules. California had good mules and good horses. Santa Fe had donkeys and wool and things like that. So the first mission left in about 1830, and they traveled across, and they were taking donkeys, carrying wool. They got out there, and they traded, and they brought back mules. Okay, mules were high value animals because they could take them on back to St. Louis because people were coming west, and so there was a good market for mules. So they would go out and get maybe 3,000 horses or mules and bring them back. And so when they brought them back, they weren't just leading a string of animals, they were herding thousands of animals across the West. And that's where a lot of horses got loose, left the herd, and went wild. So that's part of the history of how those horses populated across the West. In Hickoria, it's kind of interesting because it's right alongside of the Spanish Trail. So the Hickoria would be one of those places where horses could be, they have left the trail, gotten off the trail, or where people kind of had a repository, oh, we'll get some more horses up there. So the other thing to note about this area is that the Ute Indians, who live mostly just across the border in Colorado, they were consummate wheeler dealers, and they were really good at trading for things, and they wanted horses. So what the Spanish didn't have enough labor down in Santa Fe. They had a labor shortage. And so what happened was the Utes got in the habit of snatching the women and children off the Navajo lands, taking them down and trading for horses. And so they could trade a young woman for 6 horses. There's documented history of that kind of transaction happening. So when you start thinking about all the convoluted ways that people had horses, traded horses, were doing things with horses without any pins, you know, they're just out there trying to keep their horse herd together. You can see how horses are going to get lost, So it's really interesting, like the horses up in Mesa Verde, have a genetic structure that's really different than the horses in the Hickoria, even though they're not that far apart, really. So it's really interesting how there's these little pockets of horses that get genetic structure. The horses that are at El Rito, or they might be called the Haramesa horses, they are a lot smaller. They're really small ponies, and they've got that pony temperament of kind of undomesticatable in a way. They're very emotional. And so yeah, they have their emotions real shallow. So they have been considered to be very difficult to train if you don't understand that they're just these emotional creatures that it's easy to elicit that habit. Now, how did those animals get that way? I don't know. The Forest Service had this thing that they just wanted to dismiss the genetics of those animals and say, oh, some hippies put some Shetland ponies out there in the 60s or something. But that's not really the case. When you think about the Spanish had a real value for little horses because the little horses could make it across the sea when big horses couldn't. So they would go to the Shetland Islands, they would go to the islands off of the English coast, get small horses to cross over into the New World. So the Spanish themselves had little horses. They had little Shetland-like horses. So those genetics are all mixed in there. So when they just dismiss it and say, no, they're just 50 Shetland ponies, but it's like a bigger deal than that. So I have, right now I have, I think 4 Hickory horses. I have maybe, I have 3 El Vito ponies, and I have a Nevada horse, and then I've got some San Felipe horses. And the horses that I have now, because I've trained over 700 horses and got them adopted, I kind of have the horses that didn't really qualify to be adopted, you know. So I've just got kind of the horses that with the temperaments that couldn't really be placed. Okay, so I know what the worst of the worst looks like in these birds. The horses that I have from the Hickoria, they're smart, but maybe they don't want to be handled too much. But what's really different about the New Mexico horses in this area, and I think this probably is true too if you look at the Bordeaux Atropasado horses down from Socorro as well, because mostly they've been bait trapped. They've mostly been bait trapped, and they haven't been held for a long time. And I don't think that helicopter gathering really makes them bad. You know, I don't think it really harms them. But what I think is that there's a whole mindset that goes with how you treat animals. And if you are in a situation where they're just bringing in hundreds of animals with helicopters, that animals don't get treated well. Whereas the bait trappers know, I got to keep this animal in a positive mindset or I'm not even going to catch it. So there's just like a different mindset in the people that trap those horses. So the horses that I've gotten from BLM facilities, that have been rounded up that way, if they can be traumatized really easily. And if what they learn, the first thing that they learn about humans is not good, they kind of think not good things about humans. But what bait trapped horses do is they learn, oh, the humans are going to show up and they're going to put some food out here. Okay, cool. You know, so they start out with a different mindset about who people are and what people do. The Mesa Verde horses are a really good example of that. They've been rounding them up for a couple of years. I think Marvel was here this morning, maybe. He came off the range, and then he came to me, and I got to spend the winter with him. And the next year, I got 19 more of those horses. And those horses, Tim McGaffick had helped the Park Service do a really good job of capturing, of baiting for those horses and capturing those horses. And those horses came up, and they just had a positive attitude about them. They were so easy to train. It was crazy. You know, so kind of since then, I've been on a mission to tell people, you know, what we got to do is quit traumatizing them when we first catch them. If we just quit doing that, we're going to be way ahead. It's going to be so much easier for people to train horses, to take these horses, train them, and get them homes. But if the first thing that we do is traumatize them, that sticks with them the rest of their life pretty much. And it's hard to get them past that. So I'm on that mission.
I have a question for Dr. Irick. Okay, so that is such an interesting point. Some people think in terms of financial units. How, and you've worked with horses, and so when a horse is traumatized, and then it's then put into a system where it's, you know, we're trying to adopt this horse out, it's, you know, it's not responding well. Well, I can imagine it takes much more time to get that horse trained to go after it.
Yeah.
Is there any way to financially account for the setback that is incurred when a horse is rounded up by a helicopter and traumatized versus one that is, you know, gently captured? I would like to see, I'd like to be able to put a number on it.
Yeah, there's so many other variables that it becomes really hard hard to calculate that, you know, it's like, how can you compare this and this? And, you know, it becomes really hard, and then there's so many other nuances, like, okay, you can have bait trapping, but maybe you have the contractor bait trappers, which the Forest Service had for a few years, where these guys would just come in, build these big pens and try to run all these horses, get all these horses in, and then they get disgusted because there's only like 7 that showed up, you know, when they wanted to get a whole bunch of them. But that's just, there's so many variables that you can't, even the horses, the basic birding horses, there's variables just between year to year, and just the way people move around them, the way, you know, that when Tim set that up, you know, everything was really calculated to keep the horse's mental framework positive, you know, but then as time goes by and the Park Service takes over more and more of it, they don't have the same awareness and values, so they let things slip and they go to certain parts of it. So even though it's still bait trapping, it doesn't turn out exactly the same.
If they could get the horses off yesterday, they would be happy. And so their goal is to get them moved on. We have understands longer. Yes. And so they could actually be doing themselves a disservice by trying to push too much.
Yeah.
So if you attempted to round up the horses, you know, being a horseback, would that also be stressful for the horse?
It just really depends. If you attempted to round them up horseback, if you were using low stress stockmanship techniques, you probably could do it without stressing them out. It just really depends on the person's awareness of the animal and not pushing them into panic mode, but getting them, oh, the humans just do this, oh, that's not a big deal. Oh, the humans just do this, oh, that's not a big deal. You know, they get in the habit of thinking that way, oh, but we're just moving this way, okay, it doesn't really matter. You know, that, when the horse is thinking that way, rather than the horse is panicking, you know, the problem is when you get people with on horseback with horses, let's see, what is it called? Bronx and Dogs? Yeah, just watch the Bronx and Dogs channel. You'll find out how bad people can be. Yeah.
How was Toledo having? Was he bait trapped?
He was bait trapped.
Okay. And your other horse, was he also bait trapped?
She was bait trapped. She was bait trapped.
She is, okay. And they both have that same curious, as impressive, just how curious, how willing he was to engage.
Yeah, and also the Forest Service has done a pretty good job of maintaining a pretty low stress environment.
Cool.
Relative.
Oh, yeah, afterward too.
Yeah, relative to how things can get.
So we'll go back to your question. Both of my horses came from different areas in Korea. Tulio came from the Caracas, and Spicy came down down by the gas pipe, which is down south.
It's a southern, it's
Southern
long
territory.
territory.
Yeah.
And in general, do they tend to have different personalities, different genetics, and things?
No, I don't think
different
so.
locations.
Both of these 2 horses are like, my filly is just exactly like what Toledo was. Although she's probably like a brick wall. You can't get her to listen to Toledo. She's like, what? If you ask her to step over, she can lean on you just a little bit harder. But she's just like, but she's so versatile. And I have my grandkids, around my grandkids, I have a 3-year-old grandson that I don't worry about him being around either one of them. Because they're just, not that I let them free roam around them, you know, but I have not worried about them, about him around them. They're just so kind and so curious, and they just want to be where we are. At least that's what's at my house.
Yeah. And are all of the horses coming off the person that they create being bait trapped?
Yeah.
Okay, so no more.
Let me ask a question. Barb, in my experience in Victoria, there are some genetic strains. They're not all exactly the same. I've got a big set of high withered, really high, super high withered horses. And then I think that there's some short fat ones. The genetic strain of short fat. Kind of
That's a great question, Patricia. Okay, actually, JMHA has done DNA samples, or doctors have, of 24 through the last few years. And the predominant bloodline that comes through there is the Marchador, which is the Iberian and comes from the Spanish background. The second most common is the Galicinia, again, very Spanish. But after that, you can really, and this is quoting only what Dr. Cawthron quotes as the #1 position. So, when they do the DNA samples, they look at 3 possible links, and this is only using the #1 position because he views that as the most likely, most prominent source. So when you look away from the 2 most common, then you can hit Peruvian Paso, you hit the Carrillos, Nordica, which is a draft, the Belgian draft, the halflingers. So if you look at all of those, you'll also see in those breeds today, you see a lot of difference in the personalities, if you were to compare some of those. We also have seen Andalusian and Lipizone in the #1. I have one of those Lipizones. So
Two-wheel, his first genetic was Lipizone. Yes. Yeah.
So that's got to be really some broad mixtures.
Now, my filly at the house, hers was cream draft, and she looks like a draft.
And you said your behavior is very stoic and
And she looks like a draft. I mean, you can play the Budweiser commercial for me when I start writing or the jingle, I'm sorry, the jingle, but she looks draft, but she's big, stocky, and just, but both of them, as far as mine goes, both of them have the gentlest, and they're smart, and they're kind. And, when they pick their person, they pick their person. And I don't know if my house, if I got my environment set up good for them, and why I've been successful with those 2, because I had 2 that I wasn't as successful with, but these 2 I have been. So I don't know if it's my environment or my approach. I can't say, but I just know that these 2 that I have right now are just extremely smart and kind.
congratulations.
Give the wild some checks.
Oh, yeah, because he's been trying to avoid that one. So you're
She was just setting up a contract to start generating something for our service. So she comes through and she, I asked her what I thought on the last name and all that. She said, well, what are your thoughts on generating something down? I said, well, right now I've got 2 broken wrists, recovering from the broken nose I had. Of course, totally left me off and break the wrist. So I said, yeah, I think we can do something like that. She said, I'll get the contract so you don't have to deal with them on the finance and I'll figure it out. Great. So we kind of jam in a nutshell as far as how we got started. And they kind of put us on a time limit, and it's great we couldn't miss out. They had 4 outreach. And I'm still not cash on my wrist. And Bob said, we don't pick them horses up in the next area, they're not in the school. I said, well, we can. So if you picture me, Barb would have another one of the volunteers come over, and she would set up something the time show was working a job during the day. So show wasn't going to be there, like he there by himself. And Barb said, I don't want to be in the pen with them without somebody else. So she'd send somebody over, I'd climb in there. But honestly, with me not having my hands and my so much quieter. And I came from job just stand there and show. And it was amazing to see, even with them, they were very much challenged. It was a good thing we got hit for that, and it changed my life. I went through a lot of doing that. But just, it's just been a real pleasure and an honor, to be a part of it.
I have a question for you. So, you talking about jockeying race horses, you're on fast pace, barrel races, and stuff like that. I think, do you agree that sometimes we as people tend to get in a little bit of a hurry, especially when you come from that, and you think that you're supposed to, in our minds, we put a marker here and we haven't reached that yet. Oh my gosh, what are we doing? We just need to slow down, step back, take a breath.
Sometimes, if we just step back and chill out, we can accomplish more of a change in that Mustang than if we spent 20 minutes in the tanks. Because they're not living.
I'm learning that.
It's just limited. What do you think?
5-minute session, they will learn the whole time. A 10-minute session, they'll learn half that time. In a 15-minute session, they'll learn a third of that time because they only learn about 5 minutes.
And you can increase that.
Just if you're introducing a new concept or any course, it doesn't even matter. If it's something that they've done over and over and over, then they're not really learning it at that point. But if it's just truly learning something new, then 5 minutes is it. You're going to get your best results. And then just put it away, come back, do another 5 minutes later. The horse can learn again. You can do a bunch of sessions in a day, but you can't. It does not work to keep doing longer sessions.
No way.
Yeah.
I've changed something.
Okay, because they're better trained at reading us than we are reading them.
I guess I could bring us back for a second to Patricia's conversation about the trade and stuff. I have read documentation that said back in, probably 1800s, somewhere in there, that the original foundation of the Hickory herd was definitely documented as escaped, if you will. They were doing some culling in the Hickory herd, the Hickory Apache, and some of the horses escaped from the reservation and slipped over into the Carson Forest, and that is how the Hickory herd is started. Now I have found that in print, but I'm sure there's a lot of people that would probably still want to debate it, but I think that it's important to know that their influence definitely came from the Hickory. And today, the influence of the Carson Forest is still prevalent from the reservation because, there's a 4-foot fence between the Carson Forest and the reservation, and the elk take it down all the time. So the herd is, pretty free to roam in many ways. And one of the things that we're really working at with the Forest Service is that we need to manage the herd as the Hickory Reservation, the Carson Forest, and the BLM next to the lake, because that's where they roam. Their water is at the lake, and their food is in the forest, and here we go round and round. So
How's that working so far?
I think that since, for those of you that don't know, the United States Forest Service did start a collaborative back in 2020, I believe it was, and a collaborative made up of various advocates, permittees, and organizations like the elk organization, wildlife organization, started a collaborative to come up with solutions to managing the herd. That collaborative is still in place. We just had a meeting last week, and we have an opportunity and some leadership from the Forest Service that keeps the collaborative in place and believes in the importance of collaboration and partners. And so members of the collaborative like JMHA and Homeland Habitat, which you heard Robert speak earlier, we're part of that collaborative. We're also partners with the Forest Service, which means we get a few patents to do a lot of work. But at any rate, I think that all of those components are, I would say that if that wasn't in place, we wouldn't have the success in managing the land. And yeah, and it's been spoke about. It's very hard for all of us advocates to deal with the concept that there's not enough food and water for everybody. And you know, it's the responsibility for everybody to manage to the land and to all the wildlife. And that's pretty hard to deal with for some of us super Mustang lovers. But
yeah, I'd like to just say something about it. Is Bart's been involved in this, and the last time we did one of these events, I had to polish her up over there because I'm so proud of her. You know, I'm so proud of her. Wow. And she's just been involved with this thing, and it's a model for the whole country, really. It's an incredible thing. And if other local areas could learn to do the same thing, they wouldn't need to send in a contractor with a helicopter to round up all these horses. Instead, they could have the local people come up with a solution that's good for the community. And I just am really in favor of that whole concept.
I study a lot of agri-science and agriculture science and environmental science. You expressed there's not enough food and water for all of them, but you also expressed the desire to help communities. Not everybody can take a Mustang. Not everybody wants a Mustang. So why don't we? So on the other side of running a business, they can't keep a Mustang for 2 years in a holding facility. It's not that humane, it's not that great. The animals can go crazy in that holding pen. If that horse is in there longer than 60 days, why don't we slaughter them?
Well, there's some things about that. Is that number one, the American people didn't really want to do that. That's why the whole laws of 1971 were passed. The people said, no, we want to protect these animals. Now, one of the problems is the way that they're managed, where their populations are allowed to grow pretty big, and then there has to be a whole bunch of animals taken off, and then you have to figure out what to do with a whole bunch of animals. And then you get into the situation that you're talking about, where lots of animals in holding, and what's right for those animals. You know, is it better that they were dead? And you know, but there's an opportunity to change how they're managed, to be more controlled, to be more where the community takes these horses and makes them into something and gets them adopted. And when I was at the Forest Service, the years that I was working with the Forest Service, every horse that came off of that horse got adopted. You know, every single one of them, because there was a demand for those animals. Now, they've been doing all the Hickory horses, they've been doing all the Irick Mesa horses, and going, we could use some some more horses. Let's take some of these Devil's Garden horses, you know, let's take some of these donkeys from Arizona. So there's, you know, the fact that there's people in place, organized to take care of, to deal with that situation, then that's one thing that I feel like there's been a major mistake on the government's part, is that, you know, despite Mandela's doing this, you know, there's no profession of being a Mustang trainer, you know. Now, they started having the Mustang Heritage Foundation, and it had the TIPS program, and they were paying $1,000 to get the horses trained and adopted. They weren't managing it very well, they had problems, and then they quit doing it. But that did enable a lot of people to say, hey, I can make a living training these Mustangs. Well, you know what? That's good for these little rural communities where you don't have much else to do. There's not a lot of employment opportunities, but you can go down and get some Mustangs and take them to the last house and then train them for you. You know, that's how it works. So, you know, that is like Michelle over here, you know, she's been taking Mason Birdie horses. You know, there's an opportunity. If we could say, hey, we're Mustang trainers and we can make a living, we can pay our bills doing this, you know, but it's not true, exactly, you know. Yeah. I've never, yeah. But it's my dream that should be a profession, you know, that there should be some payment. It's hard work. You get all these horses, you take on the tasks, and you train them, and you get them adopted. Yeah.
So it's a government problem?
I think it's a government problem because they would prefer, or the system always perpetuates that nobody can really do anything about it. You know, nobody can do anything about it. Let's perpetuate this idea that nobody can do anything about it, and then we can make an argument that there's so many in holding, and then we can take them to slaughter. Well, one of the things to know about them going to slaughter is they still go to slaughter. Okay, that's still
We should slaughter them in America.
right. Yes,
No,
but
they
they
makes them what they are.
right, but they don't. They don't.
And that's been something, once the U.S. decided to do it, it's not breeding horses anymore, they said.
Well, one of the problems was the BLM guys got caught doing this, okay? This is the Office of the Inspector General report, you know, is the BLM, they were taking them, and when individual employees were buying them for $25 and then selling them into the slaughter pipeline for, I don't know what they were going for at that point, but they were making a lot of money. And so then when they got their hands slapped for doing that and they couldn't do it anymore, then what they did is they went, okay, we're just going to make it so we don't really get that many horses adopted. We're just going to make it hard so we can have a backlog of horses. And then sooner or later, we'll have horse slaughter in this country again. And so...
And that's not, I mean, it's
once
they got rid of it, and everything goes to Canada.
Right, but 10 years ago, you didn't know that wasn't going to happen. You know?
Oh yeah, when they took it away, because once they took the sell of horses, sell barns, I mean, there were kill buyers.
There's still are.
And it wasn't the Mustangs, it wasn't just the Mustangs.
Yeah, there's
It was
still are.
across the board.
There's
I mean,
still are.
there was no, I mean, I'm sitting there, I got a 19-year-old Portuguese horse and a 20-year-old Portuguese mare that basically I'm just feeding them because they've been good to the family. But I got
Yeah.
so I either euthanize them and bury them on the place or just go about my ways. Where before there was a need for that. I'm not saying that they need to just ship all the wild horses to slaughter. I'm not on that. But the point is I have is we we have two really good friends. One's up in Montana. He runs a program for horses for Eagles. And they use all Mustangs. 4 years ago when he started this program, and another friend of mine is Wes Taylor, who lives out in Utah. They went and they tried for months to get Mustangs. And Wes was a tip trainer. He worked with people out in Arizona. And the other guy, he was a vet. I mean, they had money, they had their trials built, they had everything. And they tried for months to get horses. And they couldn't get horses. Finally, they got to go ahead and do it supply in Utah, a big place up, on the highway, to go in and pick out the horses. Those people were the most greenest, non-caring people. All they cared about, I mean, was the feedlot. And all they cared about was the money they would get to feed them horses. I mean, over, I don't know, there had to be 2,000 horses. Being on hold. And there was people, it was a lockdown facility, you had to have an appointment to get in there by a certain bureau, then person, and stuff like that. So with that kind of bureaucracy, I think you guys are lucky down there with the Hickory horses. Because you've gotten something in there to manage them, other than, working, you got a Forest Service in management. Well, if you get in the northern part of the United States, Wyoming, Utah,
It's a different deal, and even here, the BLM guy, well, he can't go inspect the BLM horses.
Well, you can't go inspect.
Yeah, he can't go inspect the BLM horse, you adopted a BLM horse, you need to get it inspected. He can't do it because they won't enable him to do anything with the horses, just that their rules are such, so they've got all these crazy rules and all that stuff needs to get cleaned up and fixed.
It's so different from here to the East Coast, because what's happening with the Mustangs on the East Coast is entirely different, because people are begging for them.
Yeah.
But if you think for 1 minute that they couldn't overturn and open up horse slaughter in this country, we need to rethink it. They overturned Roe v. Wade, they can open up horse slaughter again. So we need to be incredibly vigilant. I mean, that's why I do these education programs, so that people understand that it's up to everyone in this room. And those 4 people sitting up there have done an amazing job, but there's so many more people around the country doing incredible work and connecting these people and getting the average person to understand what the issues are, because they hear bits and pieces from all over. So don't think for 1 minute that horse slaughter is off the table in this country.
And I'm not, and as you say, I don't want everybody to think, because I'm not saying that we need to round up horses. That's the way these horses, it's not.
You're right. In some ways, it's a necessary evil.
Right.
I don't know how to explain it. I'm probably going to talk out the backside of my head. Somewhere, it's a necessary evil. This horse slaughter. Just because maybe you have something that's unsafe, and as long as it goes to, how do I say that? Somewhere where it's good. I mean, like if you're going to have to slaughter it, maybe you can still feed the zoo animals or something. But that being said, it's panels like this, like what Barb has started, where you need to get on board, because here is where this is where the change is going to be made. Because what we deal with, what Barb and Patricia have dealt with, I'm new to this, so I'm learning. And it's a lot of bureaucratic red tape.
Well, the only reason I bring it up is I'm great in training Persian drivers since 1996.
Right.
And in France, Persian horse is the most modern choice.
It's a delicacy.
Well, and that's
so in Japan.
But we're not in France. We're in America.
But
I mean, that's like that's a whole huge conversation that we can't.
No, I
You know what I'm saying? And so, to your daughter, what I'm saying is, as you grow, you need to get a board like this. You need to get on board with somebody like this lady who has got numbers in her head that go back.
We need young people. We
And
need
and honestly,
young
this would be someplace where you could be invited to a collaborative where you could sit and watch people look down their nose at you because you're talking about a Mustang because, oh my gosh, you know, they're jug-headed and they're big-footed and the tail's crooked, I don't know, just, you know, and over a refined quarter horse, or however you want to look at it, but that's where it needs to be, and that's where the change needs to be, is somebody like yourself who needs to get on board like this one, and come up and work, and because it is a bunch of bureaucracy.
It's a big
Red
B
tape,
word.
it's a big red tape. And so, on things that you were talking about, a lot of it is our hands are tied. So what can we do to make the change for the horses to say, I need you to adopt this horse, like Julio that we had this morning. You know, he's available for adoption. But if I decide to give him away. But what we need is somebody like you, who is willing to stand up and fight, and willing to learn the numbers, and willing to get in there and sit and listen to all of this. Because last week I sat in on my first collaborative meeting, and I kind of walked out and was like, oh my gosh, I'm not impressed.
So then, where do you draw the line? Because we have a friend who just got a Mustang off of another lady who thought she could do it and then found out halfway through she could not.
Then you connect her with people from organizations like what we have, and we have trainers who can talk to them and help them through this.
Well, he ended up taking the horse from him, but how do you prevent this from turning into an adopt, don't shop scenario? But like, through that, people have been injured and died because they were pressured to adopt dogs from shelters who had issues that they couldn't handle. So now you're pressuring you, not you guys, specifically.
Right.
You're being pressuring someone to go adopt a Mustang where they could be injured or killed themselves.
And
because
that's
they
where,
don't-
and honestly, that's just a horse. You could be injured from a poor horse.
Yeah.
You could, that happens 24, that happens all the time.
Can I answer that? Okay. Number one, we need to take away the fantasy behind, oh, I'm a 12-year-old girl, and I have this fantasy, and I want this wild Mustang, and I'm just going to fall in love with him. We've got to stop that.
Yeah.
Stop the false romance. Educate parents like this, our discussions sit around and meetings like that. Educate. So if we educate, if we could educate your friend, maybe she would call me and just I can help her for that. Or what, you know, I don't know if you guys are local.
So you guys are singing the same thing as what in the draft coach market 10, 15 years ago when they came up and kicked the DMU lines off. So they took all the draft, because they finally started doing was they finally started putting registered mares on the DMU lines because they got tired of slaughtering poles. And so they started doing it, and then when they shut the DMU lines, we had this whole big world of draft horses. Like everybody wanted to adopt them. And everybody, I'll adopt me a draft horse. And the thing is, that 2,000 pounds of beans is a whole lot worse than 900 pounds of beans.
Right.
You know, and I see it, I've been in the draft horse for a long time, and I see people, oh yeah, I'm going to do this, and this is a general training, this is, and so I'm glad to see that there are people that we can get some more education, but it's people like her who wanting to be a tech trainer, who wants us to work with these horses. And it's just so much hard time to get the horses. You know, and you look online and there's hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of horses and they're that are looking for a home. You know.
I think I want to just come back and echo a few things that everybody's brought up here. And education. We have got to educate ourselves all the time. If you want to adopt a Mustang, please get some support. Ask somebody who owns a Mustang, who trains a Mustang, because the reality of the adoptions today of first-time Mustang owners, first-time horse owners, That's just brutal. And it is so commonplace. And that is why so many Mustang adoptions fail.
I wanna argue with that, because I think that first-time adopters do a great job. They can. And educated trainers can do a crappy job when they don't spend any time with the animal. And that's what I say. It doesn't matter how much you know to start out with. It's how much time you're going to put into it.
True.
And that's the difference. That's the only difference. Because you cannot know anything, and you can still do a great job. But it doesn't matter if you know the most things in the world. If you don't go out there and do it, you don't have a trained animal. Now our policy at our organization is always to take animals back if it doesn't work out. And we've been trying different things. When we had the Mason Birdie horses, we tried offering a class to potential adopters. That was kind of interesting to do it that way. And we've gotten to where, remember one question we asked is, how much time do you have? How much free time do you have right now that you can spend with your horse? Because that's what we really want people to think about. We want to think about, this is going to be expensive and this is going to take a lot of time. Do I want to do it? And I'd rather talk people out of it than let them try it, get the horse messed up, have to go get the horse, bring it back, fix it. You know, that's the expensive part. And we kind of, one of the questions you asked a little while ago was about fixing things. I have a friend that's a school teacher, and he says, if you tell them the wrong thing once, you have to tell them the right thing 27 times before it goes in their brain. So it's like 27 times harder to unlearn something than to learn it the first time. And I think that's probably true of horses as well.
I like that one. I agree.
Barb, this is where you make me plug. There's a book that Barb and I just finished together. It's the editor now. It addresses all of this. And our purpose in writing our book was to prevent people from having failed adoptions. There's so many. And these horses come back to us. It's so hard. You're not starting at zero. You're starting at negative.
Michelle Bell and I have been working on a book about Mustangs to address the whole problem from A to Z. We've been working on this book for 3 years, and it's with the editor. We're going to get this book finished. It has all of our heart and soul in it. It has a lot of stories about successes and failures, and I can tell you that all I can say is what I know every single person here feels. These horses, they deserve the best we can give them. And we as the public still need to work on what is our best, because we're not there.